If you're searching for a home in South Katy with a short commute, close to I-10, zoned to exceptional schools with some English countryside charm, Nottingham Country might just be the right place for you. Nottingham Country occupies some of the most valuable real estate in Katy, Texas, and it's located just south of I-10 in between South Bryan Road and West Green. In this video here today, we're going to cover some important details that you need to know about the neighborhood, along with a couple of other pros and cons so that you can determine if Nottingham Country is right for you. Hi, I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local resident and realtor right here in Katy, Texas, and I've helped hundreds of people relocate from all over the country right to our great city. If you're considering a move to the area, I would love to add you to our client family. Nottingham Country started construction in the late 1970s and early 80s and completed closer to the late 90s. It is absolutely crazy to me to think that the oldest parts of this neighborhood are 50 years old and the vast majority of it is kind of 40 years old. But here we are, right? So Nottingham Country was put on the ground kind of before master plan communities were really a thing in the Houston area. And so what that gets you is kind of this quirky, charming feel, in my opinion, with lots of different architectural styles. So some of them are built in that Tudor feel, tagging back to the name Nottingham, right? And some of them are going to be like that creative, we'll call it creative 1980s construction, where like the roof lines are pitched in all different angles and there's atriums in the middle of the houses. And some of them are going to be your very traditional, like A-frame style, pitched roof, like classic solid home. So, and a lot of these homes are just like right next door to each other. So if what you value is high variation, but like solidly constructed homes, Nottingham Country is certainly not one to sleep on. Now, master plan communities were really smart about putting things in like sidewalks, and this predates that. So one of the oddities of Nottingham Country is that there are no sidewalks. So if what you want is to have your child be able to learn to ride their bike on a sidewalk, this is probably not the neighborhood for you. But I will say that there is a lot of respect amongst neighbors for this very thing. So when you drive through the neighborhood, what you'll see is parents with strollers in the street. You're going to see kids on bikes in the street. You're going to see kids playing soccer in a cul-de-sac in the street, right? So there's very much this kind of culture kind of by default that you need to drive slowly and you need to understand that when you're in the neighborhood, people are using the neighborhood. So just something to put in your back pocket there. Now, one of the things that I love most about Nottingham Country is that it offers an incredibly affordable option to buyers in a zoning pattern in Katy ISD that is extremely attractive. So to talk about the money side of it for just a moment, in the last year, the average price point for a home ranged anywhere from $330,000 all the way up to about $770,000. Now, the average price on those homes that sold was $467,000. And what that bought you was a 2,800 square foot home, about a 4-bed, 2.5-bath, 2-car configuration on an 8,800 square foot lot. So that's very affordable when you think about it in terms of Cinco Ranch or Seven Meadows or something further west, like in Cross Creek Ranch, right? Now, affordability in Nottingham is just not isolated to price itself, right? Like it tags back to the tax rate and to also your HOA dues. So a great thing about Nottingham Country is that the tax rate in general is right at about 2.09% before exemption. So after exemption, you'll get even more of a discount. But when I think about property tax rates for anyone buying a home in South Katy, what I think about is something closer to 2.6 or 2.7. So to see 2.09% is really great if you don't want to deal with an ongoing property tax burden. Now, another thing that's nice about the neighborhood is that the HOA dues annually are not super punishing. They're right at about $1,000, if not just a squeak over that. But most of the HOAs in our area, I would say, are going to be something closer to $1,500 or $1,600 a year. Another great thing about the HOA is that it's not going to charge you a capitalization fee on the way in, where the developer just sticks their hand out and says, hey, give me 1/4 or 0.5% of the price of your home, and I'm just going to take that and keep it forever. It is pretty reasonable as far as ongoing costs go when you live in that neighborhood. Now, one of the primary driving reasons why people love Nottingham Country and choose it is because of the excellent school zoning pattern within Katy ISD. Now, this school zone pattern is going to be the whole neighborhood is zoned to Taylor High School. But half of the neighborhood goes to the elementary school called Pattison, the junior high called McMeans, and the other half of the neighborhood goes to Nottingham Country Elementary and Memorial Parkway Junior High. Now, if you go and you research all 5 schools that I just listed, all of them are A-rated by the Texas Education Agency. And if you go to niche.com, where you want to see something like parental opinion, you're going to see that they also rated all 5 schools with an A rating. Now, when you talk to people, I would say that you'll find that some people will say that they prefer Patterson and McMeans versus Nottingham Country and Memorial Parkway. And that preference is not necessarily rooted in like academic rigor. But what we do find over time is that there's going to be like a small percentage difference between the value of the homes depending on the school zoning pattern. So that Patterson, McMeans, Taylor will edge it out by a couple percentage points over the other. So again, there's nothing wrong with any of the schools. They're all A-rated by anybody, but that is perhaps an important detail that you might want to know. Now, a second major reason why people love living in Nottingham Country is, of course, going to be the location. Now, it's a little bit further west than, let's say, Green Trails, which is closer to the Energy Corridor. But if you're commuting to the Energy Corridor and you live in Nottingham Country, great news. You can still bypass every bit of the traffic that's coming west of the Grand Parkway. So I talk to folks in a buyer consultation all the time that would say, I would sooner jump off a cliff than have to compete or fight with the traffic that's coming from, the depths of the West Katy area. So there are many people that will isolate their search specifically to anything that's east of the Grand Parkway, and Nottingham Country fits that bill. So if you are working in the Energy Corridor, if you need to get to the Park and Ride because you're going to go downtown, if you're commuting to the Galleria area, if you need to get to West Chase, the Beltway, I would say that this is a very easy place for you to live and not get buried in tons and tons of traffic. Now, another important thing that you need to know if you're conducting your search in Nottingham Country is that it is highly likely that a home that you are interested in is going to sell like that, and generally in multiple offers. So even in 2026, where we're dealing with interest rates that are still above 6%, where we're dealing with people being uncertain about job opportunity or whatever, Nottingham Country tends to continue to be very attractive for all the reasons I just described. So if you see a home that has been renovated, if you see a home that has beautiful paint, a lovely kitchen, or a new roof or double pane windows, rest assured that someone else is interested in that home as well. So I expect a home like that in Nottingham Country to sell, I would say, within a week. So if you say that you want to be in that neighborhood, I very much want to have a buyer consultation with you. I want to get you pre-approved, and I want us to understand that we need to be on a search filter so that when the right home comes up in that neighborhood, we go and we see it. It's very common to see these go under contract with at least 2 offers within, I would say, at most 7 to 10 days for the ones that are going to move. Now, the flip side of that coin, of course, is that there are going to be a lot of homes that stay on the market. And that's just because you get high variation in 40 to 50 years on how someone has cared for their homes, right? So the devil's in the details in Nottingham Country, especially. It is a little bit more like an Easter egg hunt whenever you're searching for your property. But be aware that that house that you like could very well get snatched up just like that. Now, the last important detail that I want to share with you about Nottingham Country before we move into the pros and cons is that this neighborhood was high and dry during Harvey. A lot of times when people are relocating in from out of this area, they pull up the flood maps and they look at the location of Barker Reservoir on the south side of I-10 or Addicks Reservoir on the north side of I-10. And they say, Nottingham Country, Green Trails, those all kind of look kind of close to the reservoir. And that's true, but also our elevation over in these neighborhoods is high enough that these neighborhoods stayed high and dry. I don't personally know of anyone that flooded directly from rising water in these neighborhoods. Nottingham Country did suffer a little bit from the freeze of 2021. They do have a lot of older pipes in this neighborhood. You're going to see some galvanized pipes that definitely did bust during that terrible freeze in 21. But the good news, of course, then is that the home got renovated, probably with PEX plumbing. So a lot of these homes really have had the guts turned inside out. I would say low flooding risk, but still things that you need to be aware of structurally and mechanically that could be an issue for you. So let's talk about the pros for a second of Nottingham Country. The number one reason why I think people say they want to live in this neighborhood is not necessarily the location of the schools. I would say it's for folks that say that they value construction of a time gone by. And what you see in these neighborhoods is solid wood everything. And the cues are all there. Like from the moment that you open the door to the moment that you shut it, like it feels like you're in this like secluded vacuum. Like there's no noise. It's a solidly constructed home. And that might not be because you have double pane windows. Like these are 40 and 50-year-old homes, right? It's just that the method by which these homes were put together, I think is superior to a lot of the construction that's being put on the ground right now, right? Like a lot of the homes have wood paneling that, you know, may have been painted over or not, but it's still like, it's not plywood. It's like 5/8 inch thick, beautiful oak that's been hung on these walls, right? Silly things that sound kind of simple. Like when you put your hand on the banister, it's not like a carrot, like it's a giant piece of wood that you get to just look at, right? Like the quality of construction is evident throughout the entire home. Another thing too is that for as many people that love, let's say, an open concept floor plan, there's just as many people that say, I don't want to look at everything that I own when I'm standing in one room, right? And Nottingham very frequently has the most traditional elements of construction from the 70s, the 80s, and the early 90s. So you are going to see a lot of rooms behind doors. You are going to see kitchens that are kind of tucked behind half walls that aren't necessarily visible to the main living areas. And for as many people that say that they don't like it, I would say just as many people say, I really value that in a particular home. Now, the second major reason that I hear people say that they would consider Nottingham Country over other neighborhoods in the immediate area is going to be the relative affordability to other neighborhoods. I've mentioned this in other videos, but I do want to point out that there is a very affluent population that lives on the east side of 99 in South Katy. The zip code called 77094 is actually one of the highest income per capita places in Katy ISD. You've got a lot of $1 million property that lines that area over by the Barker Reservoir. And Nottingham Country is, by contrast, a good bit more affordable, right? So, for example, in Green Trails, your average home costs somewhere just north of $600,000. It's like $620,000. And I just mentioned to you a few moments ago that the average price in Nottingham Country is $467,000, right? And if you are managing, let's say, a budget that is perhaps a little bit on the lower side of these still very high numbers, Nottingham Country is going to be more affordable than some of the other options. Now, affordability is tricky, right? Like it's not just the price of the house itself. You do get a lower cost of property taxes, like it's still that 2.09%, but the cost can sneak up on you in other ways as well. And that is something that I like to point out to homeowners too. When something goes wrong in a 40 to 50-year-old home, it's not going to be like small value wrong. Like we're not talking 3 digits, we're probably talking 4, if not 5, right? So when you buy a home in Nottingham Country, you have to recognize that like the 1970s and early 80s were a very confusing time in construction. So the 70s especially is a rough way to construct a home. Like you had galvanized pipes, you had aluminum wiring, you had dubious like connections going underground for your sewage and drainage. And that can really be tough, right? You will see foundation issues come up in Nottingham Country as well. A lot of these slabs were poured, 50 years ago. And like the post-tension cable system that we see for the construction is not necessarily, wasn't available. It wasn't a technology that had been developed yet. And so you'll see pretty much, I don't want to say every home, but almost every home in Nottingham Country has either had or needs foundation work, right? So the affordability I would say is great. And as your friendly neighborhood realtor, I would just put an asterisk on. Make sure that if you live here, you've got the savings or the ability to repair the home when it needs to be repaired. Now, you can't talk about pros without talking about cons, right? So the con number one that I'm going to lead off with is tagging back into what I just mentioned, is that not everybody is doing what needs to be done, or not everyone can afford to do what needs to be done on their homes as they age. So within Nottingham Country, you have all of these beautifully renovated flipped homes that have all the structural mechanicals and beautiful aesthetics. And you also have homes that have been single family owners for 30 years where they really either haven't had the interest, the time, or the means to address what needs to be done on a home. So when I am a buyer's agent on a property in Nottingham Country, it's kind of like, hey, we know that this inspection report is going to be 60 pages long by default. And you as the buyer need to have the stomach for that, because what we're sorting through is not like getting this home to perfect. What we're sorting through is how wrong is the wrong, right? So that's a tolerance level that I would say not everyone has. It could be things like, hey, we found drywood termites, and those are different than subterranean termites, right? It's not just like a spot treatment for a couple $1,000s. It might be tenting the home, right? You might find a situation where it's like, yeah, the plumbing underneath the slab is fine, but all the plumbing in the walls is galvanized and it's leaking over there, which once it starts to leak, it's going to leak everywhere. And you really should replace every bit of that galvanized piping, right? So the electrical issues aren't really wide and varied in this area, but like slab issues are. And not everyone has the tolerance for dealing with slab related issues. You know, the truth of it is that when a home was built in the 50s and 60s, a lot of times eventually they get scraped. Someone will come through and just bulldoze it because the foundation didn't just crack in one spot, right? Like it got kind of graham crackery, like where it just like someone stomped on a cracker and it's like totally fractured. In Nottingham Country, we don't really see that level of foundation issue, but it could be more complicated than just one side is starting to sag. You know, you could have breaks in the front and you could have breaks in the back. And once you have foundation issues, it's usually iterative, right? Like you're not going to do it one time, you're going to do it in series, right? And so there are complicating factors, I would say, to owning an older home. And I would say you would need to have the tolerance or the expectation of being able to handle it if you are going to buy in that area. Now, a second con of living in Nottingham Country is that the lot sizes, though they are larger, are not necessarily all usable in the way that you might want to use them. Now, what I mean by that is that a lot of these homes in the neighborhood have detached garages. Now, that's not 100% true, but it is, I think, at least a little bit important to point out. So when I take buyers through homes in Nottingham Country, they will say things to me like, oh, the lot's big, but I mean, I feel like it's tight in the back, right? And it's tight in the back because you have a garage that's at least 400 square feet, if not larger, that's positioned in your backyard, right? So if you think about your backyard might only be a couple thousand square feet anyways, that can really eat up a sizable portion of the yard that you would want to use. Now, a lot of the yard setups in Nottingham Country are very much like you've got the house, you've got the detached garage over here, and then you've got a little strip directly behind the house where you can put a pool. So a lot of the yards you'll find are house, pool, garage, and then just a little tiny squeak of green right behind it. Some people like that and some people don't. Some people will say, oh, well, you can just go and play in your front yard, which is true. There's lots of kids playing, like I mentioned, in the front yard. But then some people will say, well, I don't like it because there's no sidewalks, right? So Nottingham Country is kind of like an Easter egg hunt. And I would say there's no real uniformity in what you're going to get. But I would say in general, when you drive through this neighborhood, what you will see is that people care for their homes. They look like beautiful estates, and the high quality of construction is largely there. So if you are considering a move and you want to have Nottingham Country on your list, I would say absolutely don't rule it out, but just be aware that those oddities are things that come with an older home. If you're thinking about making a move to Katy or the West Houston area, I would love to be your realtor. Make sure to check the description below where you can find my contact information. And if you found value in this video here today, make sure to click the link below and subscribe because we put content like this out every single week. See you soon.
This is special.